You can picture it perfectly, can't you? The dream, the future, the version of you that has already made it. You've written the affirmations, whispered the mantras, visualized until your eyes filled with light. And yet, nothing moves. Because intention alone doesn't bend reality. It only whispers to it. A weak signal, a spark with no oxygen. Most teachings stop there. They tell you to want it harder, to see it clearer, to imagine it until you almost believe. But imagination, no matter how vivid, is still a thought. And the quantum field doesn't respond to unfinished signals. Reality doesn't rearrange itself because you thought something once. At best, intention is the beginning, the first breath before the fire. But without the next step, it hangs in the air, unanchored, suspended between what could be and what still isn't. That next step is collapse. The instant a possibility stops being an option and becomes the world you live in. It's not a metaphor. It's physics. Before observation, every particle exists in a state scientists call superposition, multiple versions of reality waiting to be chosen. Nothing is fixed until attention arrives. But the moment an observer looks, measures, interacts, the wave collapses. One version crystallizes. The rest fade into silence. And so it is with you. You are surrounded by countless versions of yourself. The one who is free, the one who is healed, the one who is abundant. All of them hover in potential, but most people never step into any of them. They intend, they wish, they speak of change, but their emotions, their body, their nervous system still vibrate with the frequency of the old self. The field listens and collapses accordingly. You can't think your way into a new world while feeling trapped in the old one. The collapse responds not to your words, but to your state. And your state, that invisible vibration you carry, is what the field mirrors back. This is why so many people feel stuck. They imagine freedom but embody fear. They speak abundance but carry the muscle memory of scarcity. And the field, faithful and neutral, returns the echo, more of the same. You have collapsed 1,000,000 times before, into failure, into anxiety, into repetition. Not because you were cursed, but because you were coherent. Coherent with your past identity. That's how powerful you already are. You've been collapsing reality since the moment you were born. You just didn't know you were doing it. So the real question isn't, does collapse happen? It's, what are you collapsing right now? Your words may say, I want more. But your body whispers, I don't believe. And the field always listens to the body first. The spark of intention matters. But it's not the fire. It's only the match in your hand. To turn potential into flame, you must strike it, consciously, deliberately, and without flinching. Because collapse doesn't wait. It happens with every breath, every emotion, every thought that takes root. You are not waiting for the universe to move. It's waiting for you to choose. And that's where we go next. Into the physics of choice. And the moment reality decides which version of you becomes real. Reality isn't still. It's never been still. Every second, it shifts, rearranges, selects. Like a kaleidoscope turning just once. And suddenly, the picture changes. Physics calls it collapse of the wave function. Spirituality calls it creation. But both describe the same moment. The instant the infinite becomes the specific. Before that instant, everything exists as probability. The life you dream of. The version of you who already lives it. All of it hovers in a shimmering field of possibilities. Waiting. Not for time. Not for luck. But for your coherence. When your mind, emotion, and body vibrate together. Not in conflict, but in harmony. The field chooses. The wave collapses. A single version of reality hardens into place. This is not magic. It's measurement. In quantum experiments, particles don't decide on their own. They respond to observation. Your attention is the same instrument. Every time you focus, feel, and believe, you're performing an act of measurement on the universe itself. But here's the secret most never notice. You're doing it constantly. You're collapsing something every moment. Not someday now. When you wake up and relive yesterday's worries, that's a collapse. When you expect rejection before the call, that's a collapse. When you feel gratitude before anything changes, that's also a collapse. The field doesn't choose for you. It echoes what you are being. Think of it like tuning into a radio. Every emotion is a frequency. If you tune into fear, you hear only static and scarcity. If you tune into peace, the noise fades, and the song becomes clear. The song has always been playing. You just had to match its frequency. Science calls this coherence, a state where the heart, brain, and nervous system synchronize into rhythm. In that state, you send a signal strong enough to bend probability. When your biology is chaotic, the signal scatters. But when it's ordered, the field has no choice but to follow. This is the physics of choice. Not decision by willpower, decision by vibration. Every thought anchored by emotion becomes a command. Every emotion anchored by belief becomes a blueprint. And the universe is simply the canvas that responds. So look around. Everything you see right now, your surroundings, your patterns, your relationships, is the residue of past collapses. Versions of reality you stabilized through repetition. Not punishment, just physics. And the beauty is, it means you're never stuck. Because collapse is constant. It never stops listening. You can reselect. You can retune. You can collapse again. That's why change often feels sudden. It's not that life finally worked. It's that coherence reached critical mass, and the field crystallized your new signal into form. You've been doing this unconsciously all along. But once you begin to notice, everything shifts. The invisible becomes visible. The random becomes deliberate. Because reality is not waiting for permission. It's waiting for precision. And when you learn to send a stable signal, not of wanting, but of being, collapse becomes inevitable. Next, we'll go deeper into the vibration that directs the field and why your identity is the true language of creation. Reality doesn't hear your wishes. It hears your frequency. Not what you say, not what you hope for, but what you are. This is why so many people feel betrayed by the idea of manifestation. They repeat mantras, they visualize success, they journal until their hands shake. But deep inside, their body still hums the tune of fear, scarcity, and doubt. And the field, obedient and neutral, mirrors it all back. You cannot speak abundance while vibrating with lack. You cannot whisper freedom while carrying the weight of fear. Because the field does not respond to contradiction, it responds to coherence. Imagine two tuning forks placed side by side. Strike one, and soon the other begins to sing at the same pitch. That's resonance. That's you and the universe. Your identity is the first fork. The field is the second. Whatever tone you hold steadily, the field must echo. So when you keep asking, when will my dream arrive? The universe gently replies, when you stop asking. Because asking implies distance. And distance collapses into delay. Neville Goddard called it living in the end. Not pretending, not hoping, but being. He said, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Not for a moment, not for a meditation, but as a state of being. Joe Dispenza translated that into science. When your mind and emotions are aligned with a future event, your body begins to live as if that future is now. Your neurons rewire. Your hormones shift. Your biology stops rehearsing the past and starts believing the future. And once your body believes, the field follows. Because the body is not separate from the field. It is the field condensed into form. Identity is the bridge between the invisible and the physical. It's the switch that says, this is the version I'm choosing to exist in. And here's the paradox. You've already been choosing every day. When you say, I'm always unlucky, that's an identity. When you say, nothing ever works for me, that's an identity. Each phrase carries a frequency. Each frequency calls forth its mirror. So ask yourself, what identity have you been rehearsing without knowing? The poor one? The lonely one? The almost there one? Or the one who already became? Because collapse doesn't respond to effort. It responds to embodiment. It doesn't care about what you're trying to believe. It aligns with what your biology has accepted as real. That's why gratitude works miracles. Not because it's positive, but because it presupposes completion. Gratitude says, it's already here. And in that moment, your nervous system releases resistance. Your heart rhythm stabilizes. Your frequency clears. The collapse happens quietly. In a sigh, in a calm breath, in the absence of doubt. And suddenly, reality bends. Not because you forced it, but because you stopped being the one who was still waiting. Identity is the language of creation. The field understands no other. Every cell, every heartbeat, every breath is a line of code written into existence. So the real question is no longer, what do I want? It's who am I being while I wait? Because the moment your being matches your desire, the waiting ends. In the next episode, we'll We'll explore how to train that being, not through effort, but through rhythm, breath, and ritual. The art of collapsing on purpose. You cannot think yourself into a new reality. You must feel yourself into one. You must live as though it's already true, not as performance, but as frequency. Collapse is not a thought experiment. It's a practice, a rhythm, a conversation between your body and the field. And like any conversation, it requires coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, and breath move as one, the field hears a clear signal, and it responds instantly. So how do you train that coherence? How do you collapse deliberately instead of by default? It begins with 3 simple rituals: breath, imagination, and sleep. 1. Breath, the gate of safety. Every collapse begins in the nervous system. When your body feels unsafe, it clings to the familiar. It doesn't care if the familiar hurts. It only cares that it's known. So the first step is safety. You teach your body that it's allowed to change. Breathe slowly. Inhale for 4 counts. Hold for 2. Exhale for 6. When you extend the exhale, your heart rhythm steadies. Your brain waves slow down. Your entire system shifts from survival into creation. You don't force the breath. You guide it, like calming a wild animal. And as the body calms, the field around you becomes coherent. That's the moment the signal strengthens. That's where the new probability starts listening. 2. Imagination, the rehearsal of reality. Imagination is not fantasy. It's neural training. Your subconscious cannot tell the difference between what is vividly imagined and what is physically lived. This is why elite athletes visualize every move before the game. The brain fires the same pathways. The body learns the rhythm. So when you imagine your desired reality, don't see it from afar. Step into it. Feel the air in that room. Hear the sounds. Notice how your body moves there. Don't watch yourself living that life. Be the one living it. Because each sensory detail wires your brain toward acceptance. And once the body accepts, collapse becomes automatic. The key is repetition, not intensity. A few minutes of vivid alignment each day outpower hours of scattered wishing. 3. Sleep, the night bridge. Right before you fall asleep, your brain drifts into theta state, the doorway to the subconscious. What you feel in those moments writes directly into the programming of your identity. If you fall asleep replaying fear, you instruct your subconscious to build more fear tomorrow. But if you fall asleep embodying gratitude, peace, or fulfillment, you carry that frequency deep into the night. While you rest, your subconscious repeats it like a quiet mantra. And by morning, your baseline has shifted. That's how new realities grow roots. Invisibly, silently, in the dark. But here's the mistake most people make. They meditate for 10 minutes and worry for 10 hours. They breathe coherence, then drown it in chaos. Collapse doesn't measure effort. It measures dominance, the signal you send most often. You don't need perfection. You need stability. A return, again and again, to coherence. Each time you breathe consciously, imagine vividly, or drift into sleep with peace instead of doubt, you tilt the balance toward the new self. And one day, the scale tips. The collapse locks in. Reality shifts. Not with thunder, not with fanfare, but with quiet inevitability. The field simply adjusts to your most stable frequency. And that frequency has become you. In the next episode, you'll discover what happens after the collapse, when the inner signal becomes a ripple that reshapes the outer world. Every collapse begins inside you, silent, invisible, unannounced. But once it stabilizes, its echo moves outward, like ripples spreading across still water, touching everything they meet. You may not see it at first, but reality is already rearranging itself around your new frequency. Because collapse never stays contained. It expands. The physics of influence. When one tuning fork vibrates, another beside it begins to hum in resonance. This is not poetry, it's physics. Energy fields influence one another without contact. When your field stabilizes, everything nearby adjusts to match. A calm person enters a room filled with tension, and within minutes the air softens. A person radiating certainty shifts the posture of everyone around them. No words, just presence. That is the ripple of collapse in motion. It's not manipulation. It's coherence, quietly contagious. Scientists call this resonance. Biologists call it mirror neurons. Mystics call it alignment. But all describe the same thing. Your inner stability writes instructions for the world around you. The delay of evidence. Here's what confuses most seekers: the delay. You shift inside, but the outside takes time to catch up. You think nothing's happening, but the ripple is still moving. Like planting a seed, the roots grow before the sprout appears. The delay is not proof of failure. It's proof of movement still unfolding. Your emotions will be the first to change, then your thoughts, then your reactions, and finally, your visible world. By the time others notice, the collapse has already been rewriting your life for weeks, maybe months. That's why sudden success never happens suddenly. It's coherence reaching the threshold where matter must obey. The power of silence. You don't need to prove your transformation. You don't need to announce your collapse. The field doesn't require witnesses. In fact, the more you try to prove it, the more you scatter the coherence that made it possible. Real power moves quietly. It doesn't need to be seen, because it is. The Tao calls it Wu Wei, effortless influence. Mystics describe it as fragrance, subtle, unmistakable, impossible to fake. Even scripture whispers, pray in secret, and your reward will be open. The ripple grows stronger in silence. Because silence protects frequency, the living collapse. At some point, the practice disappears. Breathing, imagining, gratitude, they stop feeling like rituals. They become your natural rhythm. You no longer try to manifest. You exist as the manifestation. The field no longer negotiates with your old identity. It reflects your new one without question. That's when life feels effortless. Not because there are no challenges, but because even challenges bend toward coherence. You've become the tuning fork, the still point that organizes chaos. And from that stillness, opportunities appear. People shift. Paths open. Not through force, but through resonance. So now the question returns. Full circle to where we began. If collapse is always happening, if the field is always listening, what are you collapsing right now? Not tomorrow. Not someday. Now. You are always choosing. Always transmitting. Always rippling into the infinite. The only decision left is, what frequency will you hold? Because the world is not waiting for you to wish. It's waiting for you to be. Final words. When you stop chasing your future and start embodying it, the universe stops resisting. Because it recognizes you. You are no longer seeking the dream. You are walking inside it. Quietly. Powerfully. Permanently.